because I'm from a small town which is in West Yorkshire, and it's called Bingley. And Bingley technically is Bradford, but it's just on the limit, on the border between Leeds and Bradford. And Bingley is a town of 20,000 inhabitants, and it takes maybe 15 minutes to get the train to Bradford and 20 minutes to get the train to Leeds. But
Oh,
because my parents were born in Leeds and my dad is a Leeds United fan, I've always felt like Leeds was my city rather than Bradford. So that's my confession out of the way. Hola a todos y bienvenidos una vez más a Inglés Británico Podcast, un podcast semanal entre yo, Lewis, y mi compañero y amigo Chris, en el que hablamos de temas diferentes, de preguntas aleatorias, y hoy en este capítulo vamos a hablar de ciudades británicas que quizás nos gusta, quizás no. And now I'm going to change to English, of course. I thought I'd just introduce it briefly in Spanish, and throughout this conversation, we will also be adding some little translations in case there are any advanced words or phrases that we use in conversation, so that way you know what the word is in Spanish. But Chris, how are you doing? How's life?
yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks. I'm excited for today's episode. I love talking about Brighton and London and obviously all of the other cities in the UK. My weekend's been pretty boring, to be honest. Well, maybe not boring, let's say uneventful. Like in Espanol, like nada de notar, maybe. Because I wasn't bored, but it was horrible weather here in Gijón, like torrential rain all weekend, really heavy, constant rain, torrential rain. So just Xbox and Netflix, and yes, I had a great time because I was just playing Xbox and watching Netflix. So I'm not going to use the adjective boring, but yeah, I'd say maybe uneventful, nothing special. A great expression, nothing to write home about. Nothing to write home about. Nothing eventful happened. How about you? How's your weekend?
I mean, pretty similar, to be honest. It wasn't boring, and I wasn't bored. And remember that bored is how you feel, and boring is the thing, is the cause. So it wasn't a boring weekend. I wasn't bored. I went for some long walks. It was very sunny yesterday as well. I had some daytime beers. I ate some good food. So it was a pretty chilled weekend, a nice relaxing weekend. So I feel better for it because sometimes on Monday when we record this, I'm still struggling and recovering from maybe a 2-day hangover. But no, I was very, very sensible this weekend. And, ojo, falso amigo, sensible.
Yeah.
I was very sensible. And sensible is like responsible. In Spanish, sensato.
Yeah.
Fui muy sensato, very sensible, which shouldn't be confused with sensitive, because a sensitive person is someone who is, easily affected. They get emotional quite easily, which in Spanish is sensible. So, of course, remember this, that sensible in English is sensato en español, and sensitive in English is sensible en español. I thought I
I
had to
used
explain
to
that.
no, I think I used to make this mistake in Spanish. So when I would be thinking in English, oh, that's a sensible idea, I'd be like, ay, qué idea tan sensible. And my friends are like, what? A sensitive? Because obviously they're a sensitive. I was, oh, no, sorry. I'm thinking sensible in English. But as Lewis just mentioned, yes, sensato. So I made this mistake from English to Spanish before. Yeah.
It happens to the best of us for sure.
Yeah.
Now, let's crack on. Let's get started. Let's get the ball rolling. And we can begin with our cities. So I'll kick off and tell everybody a little bit about Leeds. But at the same time, I feel like I have to make a confession. I have to confess. Because I say I'm from Leeds, but in reality, I'm lying. Because I'm from a small town which is in West Yorkshire, and it's called Bingley. And Bingley technically is Bradford, but it's just on the limit, on the border between Leeds and Bradford. And Bingley is a town of 20,000 inhabitants, and it takes maybe 15 minutes to get the train to Bradford and 20 minutes to get the train to Leeds. But
Oh,
because my parents were born in Leeds and my dad is a Leeds United fan, I've always felt like Leeds was my city rather than Bradford. So that's my confession out of the way. And Leeds, well, I think it is the fourth most populated city in England, which may
wow.
surprise people because
Yeah,
you
I didn't
always
know
think,
that.
Liverpool must be bigger, Newcastle must be bigger. Well, no, Leeds is the fourth biggest population, and it's a very industrial city. It's a university city as well, so lots of students. And to be honest, the city centre is nothing special. It's nice, but I think Leeds was never a really, really historical city. Like Oxford, Cambridge, Liverpool, London. So we don't have so many amazing old buildings. And I mean, we've got a good cultural vibe, lots of bars, restaurants, different communities as well. It's very multicultural. And Leeds is a great place, I think, to go for a night out or a weekend away. And it's in a very, very good location because it's very easy to then go to Sheffield, to go to York, to go to Manchester. All of these three cities are within 45 minutes train. So
Wow.
it's, I would say, a strategic location. It's a cool city, but it's maybe not going to be the top of your list if you're coming to England and you want to see historical sites. So that is
Especially with
Leeds.
York next to it as well, I suppose. Obviously, York historically has a lot more, yeah, architecture, historic ruins and castles. So yeah, I think maybe the location is very well located, but maybe also because of its location, having York and Manchester nearby, maybe it's not something that people would like normally choose to go visit on holiday.
I agree, but the outskirts of the city are really nice. We've got the Yorkshire Dales, we've got the Pennines, and we've got the Lake District, which are three
Oh,
national parks within an hour. So that's definitely a reason to visit Leeds. But if you do visit Leeds, I'd say for sure go for a day trip to York because it's much prettier and it's more old fashioned, and you do get that English charm more with
yeah.
York than you get with Leeds. But enough about my hometown. Chris, tell us about you. You're from Brighton, right?
Well, again, not as big of a confession as Lewis, but Brighton is actually Brighton and Hove. For any football fans, they will know this because the football team is Brighton and Hove Albion. A long story short, they were two towns, but to become a city, they decided to join. And then we've got universities, cathedrals, but they're all split between Brighton and Hove. So rather than building more universities and cathedrals, they decided to become Brighton and Hove. So I'm from Hove, but it is still technically Brighton. Like it's Brighton and Hove, but everybody knows Brighton. So I just say Brighton. But yeah, very funny anecdote is that Hove is a lot more middle class, a lot kind of posher. So there's a very
Uh huh.
stereotypical phrase, which is, "Oh, I'm from Brighton." Oh, well, no, Hove actually. Oh, but we do
Uh-huh.
it in a very posh. Oh, Hove actually, not Brighton, dear. Hove actually. But yeah, so very middle class. I'm going to try and not speak too long, because I could speak for days about Brighton. And I'm going to focus on Brighton more than Hove because that's where the main city is and everything that happens. And it's just amazing. Obviously, it's super bohemian, very kind of liberal. We're the gay capital of the UK, so we're very accepting of all people of all colors and cultures and sexuality. And as long as you're nice, nobody cares in Brighton. That's the only thing that's
That's
important.
important. That's the way
It
it should be,
is.
I
I mean,
think.
we do have horrible people in Brighton as well. Unfortunately, they exist everywhere. But in general, it's just such a great city. There's a very famous quote, probably just from Brighton, maybe national, but Brighton has the most qualified or overqualified bartenders in the country because all we have two
Okay.
universities, so people come down to study medicine or philosophy or these kind of degrees, but they love Brighton so much that they'd rather work in a bar living in Brighton than maybe move to Leeds, move back home to Leeds for a job in their industry. So yeah, the most overqualified bartenders and waiters, they all have university degrees like law and physics, but they're working in a bar because they want to live in Brighton. I can't stop smiling talking about Brighton. Interestingly,
Oh,
my last point, yeah, interestingly, the last few years, I've been in Spain 10 years now. The last few years, I've felt less and less British, less and less. I don't mean culturally, I mean patriotically. Kind of, I don't feel when England play football, I don't feel that same patriotism, that same passion that I used to feel. I still do like it when England win, but I'm not that same kind of England. No, it's just kind of, But Brighton will forever be in my heart. I mean, I've got a tattoo of the city here, the pier, I learned this word in Spanish. How do you say pier? Muralla al
el
mar? No, that's
muelle.
wall. El
Muelle.
muelle, el
El muelle.
muelle. So yeah, it's just a great city, and I'm so proud to be from there. Yeah, there was the Queen's vacation home back in the day. It's where the Queen would go on holiday because we have a beach. It's also nicknamed London by the Sea, which I don't like. I don't like that nickname, but it's true. We're 1 hour from London, which again, last thing, a massive bonus. You can grow up and live in Brighton, but it's an hour train to get to London, which is the greatest city in the UK. So I will stop there about Brighton. Obviously, I've just mentioned London. Lewis, I think it's probably this is what our listeners are waiting for, really, isn't it? This is what they're waiting for. London. What are your thoughts of London? I imagine you've been.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I can tell you what I think about London and how many times I've been to London. But first, I have another confession to make, and it is
Oh,
that I've never been to Brighton. So
no.
I feel like it is one of these places, among others in England, that I feel slightly embarrassed or ashamed to say that I haven't been. But I think it's common for quite a lot of people to maybe overlook places in your own country because people want to go on this so called adventure and they want to
Yeah.
go abroad. So I've visited probably more cities in Spain than I have cities in the UK,
Yeah.
which is weird, but I don't think I'm alone. I'm sure there are
No.
people from Spain listening to this podcast who are maybe from, I don't know, Santander, and they've never been to Almeria, and they've never been to Huelva, and they've never been to Badajoz. I guarantee that
Yeah.
I'm not the only person who has this kind of thing going on. But anyway, returning my focus to London, to the capital, I think London's great. I mean, I think it's hard not to like London. It's true that growing up, I was never that amazed by London. And I always thought that it was a little bit too overwhelming and too big. And it's true that there is a little bit of a London bias.
Yeah.
And bias is like parcialidad. There is a bias where politicians, for example, companies, tourists, everybody thinks about London, 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 and they don't visit the rest of the country. All of the investment goes into the capital, into London. But at the same time, I think it is for a good reason because London has historically been one of, if not the most impressive and important city of all time, together with Rome, of course, and maybe Cairo, ancient Egypt, or Athens of ancient Greece. But London, it's got a cool vibe. You have so many amazing neighborhoods. Of course, you've got neighborhoods that are really rich and expensive. Then you've got other ones that are maybe a little bit more like Brighton, where you've got this eccentricity and people who will respect you no matter where you're from, as long as you are nice and kind. So, London is great. I've never lived in London. I have friends who do live in
Yeah.
London, but I've never really wanted to live in London either. I think it's great for a long weekend, but to live there, like, it's so expensive to buy a house or rent a house. And then, even if you do live in London, and let's say you live in the northeast of London and you have friends who live in the southwest, then you're probably hardly ever going to meet up
Yeah.
because it's like you live in completely different cities. So
Yeah.
that's what I think of London. Chris, what are your thoughts on London?
So, I mean, I love London. Like you said, it's spectacular. The culture, the different neighborhoods, different areas with different culture and vibes. You know, you go to Soho and it's kind of a bit posh, maybe, but it's got that cool kind of hipster posh vibe. But then you go to Camden and it's street markets, and it's absolutely incredible. It is very expensive, as you mentioned. And sorry to mention Brighton again. But this is a reason Brighton has become very expensive because of the 1 hour distance. It was very easy, or sorry, it is very easy to commute from Brighton to London. Desplazarse al trabajo, to commute from Brighton to London. So everyone was buying houses or property in Brighton and then commuting to London, which just increased the prices in Brighton as well. So I think I agree with you. I'd never really wanted to live there, but maybe because I've been so lucky living an hour, growing up an hour away from London, I went there a lot, you know, any weekend where we wanted to have a big party, just go up to London on the Friday, stay in a casino or a nightclub until 6 o'clock in the morning, and then get the first train back home, sorry.
Ugh.
But as
Those
you
were the
mentioned,
days when we were
yeah,
young.
exactly. Not anymore. The casino, by the way, I'm not a gambler. It's just in England, for anybody that doesn't know, casinos are sometimes the only place open past 4 a.m. London's different. You know, London, you can always find somewhere that's open all night. But anyway, so yeah, as you said, I think for tourism, it's just brilliant. The history, the culture, the museums. But maybe to live there, you do need to be a specific kind of person. And I'm not that person. Yeah, I need the beach. I need less people, and I need a
Mhm.
walkable city, which is a great way to describe a city which is easy to walk everywhere. A walkable city. And as Lewis mentioned, London is not walkable. You need metros. East and West London are the really, really far away. So yeah. Well, what about Birmingham? Obviously, you know, we've spoken about our home cities. So now let's talk about the biggest cities, London being the first one. The next biggest city, Birmingham, the second capital for anyone who's interested, the second capital of England. If London gets bombed or destroyed, Birmingham is the capital. But Lewis, have you ever been?
Yes, I have, and I'll probably return this question to you. But first, I'll give you a little bit of information about Birmingham. I've been once, and I went with my mum when I was looking at different universities where I might go and study when I was 17, 18. So we visited Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool, and we also drove down to Birmingham. And of course, I was maybe tempted at the idea of going to uni in Birmingham because of this, because it is the second biggest city in, in the UK, I think. Yeah, in the UK in general,
Yeah,
including Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. But to be honest, I didn't particularly like the university because it was like a campus on the
yeah,
outskirts of the university. So I'd have to live also probably in the outskirts of the city as well. And then when we were walking around the city centre, nothing felt that unique. Nothing felt that eye-catching. It was like walking around and everything just seemed very meh. It seemed
Yeah.
very normal. Nothing special, nothing particularly majestic. I do focus a lot on buildings, and if I see that the buildings, like, they're just, like, normal, it takes away a little bit of interest for me. But like I said, I only went with my mum for a day trip. I've never been there for a weekend, so perhaps I just haven't been to the right areas in Birmingham. And I know it's famous nowadays, of course, because of Peaky Blinders as well,
Yeah.
and it's got lots of canals. It's one of the curry capitals of the UK as well, along with Bradford and Manchester. So there's great Indian and Pakistani food. But I don't know. Birmingham is just not my place. It's not my thing. And I would say that Manchester probably deserves to be the second capital more than
Oh.
Birmingham, but maybe that's a north-south kind of divide. I'm not sure. Chris, you must know Birmingham a little bit better than me, I
Well,
suppose.
I mean, it was interesting. Just very quickly, it's interesting you say the north-south divide because anyone from Brighton or London, north is north of London, basically. Even though it's not like Birmingham is not the north, Birmingham is the Midlands, like the middle of the country, the Midlands. But anyone from Brighton or
Yes.
London, it's just anything north of London is the north, like in Game of Thrones, past the wall, it's the north, yeah. But no, so I actually, yeah, I've been to Birmingham maybe 5 or 6 times, each time for a weekend trip. My two best friends have individually both lived there at certain points of their lives. So one of my best friends was at the university there. So as you mentioned, it was a campus away from the city centre. I remember staying there in his dormitory, in his dorm room, sorry. We were getting the trains and taxis to the city centre. And then recently, about 5 years ago, my other best friend moved there for work, and he's now married with a kid and he owns a house in Birmingham. So I've been up to see him a couple of times as well. So even though I've been there 5 or 6 times, I do have to agree with you, Lewis. There's not really much that stands out. I mean, the canals, I'm glad you mentioned the canals because that was something I did really find picturesque, pintoresco, very picturesque. These beautiful kind of hidden canals. They're not like extremely open. Like sometimes they can just be kind of hidden behind some bushes and it's just really kind of magical in a way. So the canals were beautiful. But as you mentioned, the architecture, the vibe of the city, I didn't really get that same vibe that I get from Bristol, which we might talk about later, maybe not, or London. You know, when you walk around the city, you feel a kind of atmosphere. I've never been to the North, London, Liverpool and Manchester, not really ever visited. So I don't know about those places. But yeah, Birmingham for me, just, and again, sorry to anyone who's from Birmingham. Me and Lewis are not experts. Even 5 times is not that many times, remember. But yeah, I just didn't feel that energy that you kind of feel in not just English cities as well. You go to any European city and some of them just have a vibe. Again, anyone who's from Santander, I'm very, very sorry, but Santander, I didn't get that vibe. It's a very traditional Spanish city, but it's just like any other, in my opinion, it's just like any other Spanish city. Whereas Bilbao and Madrid and Barcelona, they have these specific kind of identity. And I think that's what Birmingham is for me. It maybe doesn't have that unique identity. It's a beautiful English city, but that's it. It's just an English, like there's nothing special or unique about it. Again, if I've offended anyone from Birmingham or Santander, I'm very, very sorry. It's just my opinion. I'm not an expert in any of this, but yeah.
I mean, if there's anybody from Birmingham listening to this or watching this, then mate, you're in the wrong place. You can
Yeah,
leave now.
yeah.
It's
Or
of
maybe
course
there's
it's
a Spanish
designed
person.
for
Yeah.
people who want to learn English, people who want to improve their English through comprehensible input and listening practice. And of course, ideally, we focus on Spanish speakers, which is why Chris mentioned the translation of picturesque, which is pintoresco. And whenever there are any other words and phrases like this, we will mention it. But I think a lot of what we're discussing at the moment is relatively easy to understand. Hopefully, you agree with us. And if so, please don't forget to leave a like as well. But let's move on and go up to the north. You
Up
mentioned
north.
for you, for you after London is the north, which for me it's like, what? What are you on about? What are
Yeah.
you talking about? And what are you on about is a nice way of being like, what are you talking about? ¿De qué hablas? ¿De qué vas,
Yeah.
tío? What are you on about? Because for me, you're right that Birmingham is right in the middle. I would still class Birmingham as the south. And to be honest, I think anything above Birmingham is usually where the north begins. So,
So
like,
that's like your
not,
divide.
I'd say so. I think from like Leicester and Nottingham, that is like right the bottom of the north. And then other cities in the north, we should probably discuss now, would be Leeds, of course, Sheffield, York, Newcastle, Sunderland, Liverpool, and Manchester. So let's focus on Manchester now because Manchester is the capital of the north, essentially. And for me to say that, it hurts a little bit because Yorkshire and Lancashire are rivals. And in
Yeah.
fact, there were wars between Yorkshire and Lancashire hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Um, and Leeds is the biggest city in Yorkshire, and Manchester is the biggest city in Lancashire. But Manchester, the location is again very convenient because you've got Liverpool on one side and you've got Leeds on another side. So you have these three pretty big cities, industrial cities and student cities that make Manchester, I think, a powerful city, let's say, because it's got good infrastructure. You've got trains everywhere, you've got coaches everywhere, you've got a big international airport as well. And
Yeah.
to be honest, the amount of times I've actually visited Manchester city centre is quite a lot, but not so many. But the amount of times I've been to Manchester Airport, oh, it's countless times because I go to Manchester Airport every couple of months. And of course, you have little flights to the rest of Europe, but you also have these long haul flights to the rest of the world. But Manchester's quite a cool place, I think. It's not the prettiest. It can be a little bit ugly in certain areas, in my opinion, but it's cool and it's quite a young city and it's a forever growing city. So I can tell that in the last decade, the skyline of Manchester has been getting bigger and bigger with different skyscrapers being built. A skyscraper, rascacielos. So now you look from a distance and Manchester is starting to have a skyline, which it never had in the past. Now you have lots and lots of skyscrapers. But Manchester, it's big. It's got lots of things to do, lots of places to eat. It's famous for football as well, with
Yeah.
Manchester United and Manchester City. And you can see that it was one of these important cities during the Industrial Revolution, along with many others, including Birmingham, where you have lots of old factories and mills that now have been changed and converted into flats and offices, shopping centers. So it's nice to see this combination of old and new. So Manchester,
Yeah.
I reckon it's a cool city. It's not my favorite in the country, but it's cool and it's forever growing. So it's an interesting place to be.
It's got a high concentration of Spanish people there as well. A lot of my students either have lived there or they have friends that have lived in Manchester because it's normally London or maybe Brighton was obviously also very popular because of the South Coast and being near London. But recently, like you said, the last 10 years or something, Manchester has become more popular for expats, people living and moving to the UK. I believe, again, I've never been really. I think I've been there one weekend for work, but I didn't really visit much of the city. But from stories I've heard, which might be wrong, but just stories I've heard, it's a lot safer now. Back in the day, maybe, again, this is a Southern opinion, so maybe it's wrong, but it did have that stereotype being a dangerous city. Manchester's the dangerous, it's the North, it's dangerous. People steal your car. But over the last 10 years or so, the stories I've been hearing is how safe it is, how accepting it is. Apparently, there's a very big gay culture in Manchester now as well, which just shows how evolved and accepting it is and not dangerous at all, or not, as stereotypically dangerous as people from the South once expected. So I would be happy to go visit properly because of the amazing feedback I've heard, not just from yourself, but from lots of other people. They all say Manchester's a really cool city.
I reckon you should go for sure, but whilst you're at it, if you're going to go up north to go to Manchester, you might as well do a tour of these big cities in the north. But in particular, probably my favorite English city is where I went to university, and it is Liverpool. So, Liverpool is only 45 minutes on the train from Manchester, kind of like Leeds is, but the opposite direction. And Liverpool, you can tell, is a historical city. It has these old Victorian buildings. You've got two cathedrals. Of course, it is the home of the Beatles as well. And there are lots and lots of bars. And it's the first Chinatown of the UK as well.
I
So,
didn't know
because it
that.
used to be a big port, it used to be a big harbor where lots and lots of people would come from the rest of the world. Liverpool has many different cultures that have been in place for a very, very long time. So you've got these ancient Chinese communities. Of course, you've got lots and lots of Irish people or people who, of course, moved over from Ireland hundreds of years ago. And the Scouse accent, which
Hmm.
is the accent from Liverpool, is very characteristic. It's quite, I don't know, happy,
Can you imitate
cheerful,
it?
friendly. Mate, yeah, I can do a good Scouse accent. Because, I
That's
was
good,
living
lad.
there and I was
That's
working
that's
there for
pretty good,
four
lad.
years.
Yeah,
It's a
4 years.
proper good
That's pretty
accent
good.
if you ask
Your,
me.
yours is much better than mine. Yeah, mine still was like, yeah, lad. I just say lad at the end of every sentence. It's you're right, lad. You're right, lad. Yeah, that's it. But yours is really good.
And a couple of nice slang terms that are really, really common in Liverpool are boss and
Boss.
sound. So
Yeah.
Chris is right that Liverpudlians, Scousers, will finish a lot of their words with lad, which of course lad is like a guy or a boy. But if a Liverpudlian wants to say that something is cool, something is sick, something is great, it's like, oh, that's boss, that lad. That's
That's
boss.
boss.
Or that's sound, that lad. That's sound. So
That's
sound
really
and
good.
boss are two ways of saying something is cool, it's good, or it's great in a Scouse accent. But Liverpool, honestly, I think it's one of the cities that I could go back and live in if I did live in the UK because it's got that special place for me from spending years there before.
Yeah.
You've got this amazing vibe again, and it's really well located because it's very close to Manchester as well. So, yeah, to sum up, I'd say Liverpool is my favorite English city. I've said it.
Wow. I've never been to Liverpool, not even for like a weekend. I've never been to Liverpool. I do want to go. My parents went recently because my dad especially, but both of my parents are big Beatles fans. So they went up to
Hmm.
Liverpool about half a year ago with some of their friends, and they did like a Beatles tour around Liverpool, like all the places they used to record music and play music. And also, it's a great way to see Liverpool with the context of the Beatles involved, and they loved it. Also, something that some of our listeners might not know, stereotypically, the North are a lot friendlier than the South. So if anyone's visited London and they think, oh, English people are quite rude, or go to Liverpool or Manchester, and I guarantee you it'll be a very different kind of English person you meet. I don't know if this is a obviously you're from the North, Lewis. Is this a stereotype that exists for you guys up in the North as well, that the North is generally friendlier than the South?
I mean, I'd say so. Yeah, I think it usually is. Of course, this is a stereotype. So, with all stereotypes, you have true cases and true examples, and then you have exceptions. And I think the main reason why we have this stereotype is because of London. And
Yeah,
as with any capital, which is like the business center of the country, people are in such a rush, they're in such a
yeah,
hurry that they don't stop to have a chat, to wave, to smile, to
yeah,
laugh because they're caught up in their own things. So then that
yeah,
stereotype has expanded from London into other cities in the South. And of course, there are exceptions. But I'd say overall, it's more true than false. And
yeah.
there was just one more thing I wanted to say about Liverpool that I was gonna say it, and I don't know if it's slipped my mind or not. I'm not sure if I've forgotten it. Ah, I remember now. Last year, my mate got married, and it's a guy from my hometown. And our stag do, despedida de soltero, was in Liverpool as well. And that shows that Liverpool does have a bit of a reputation for being a good night out, a
Yeah,
party city, and a student city, and a music city as well. And just
yeah.
to recap, stag do is a very British way of saying bachelor party, despedida de soltero. And if you are a woman, well, it would be a hen do, or bachelorette party, which is despedida de soltera. Now, I want to ask you a question because you haven't visited Liverpool, but there are a few other cities that I haven't visited, all in the south of England. So, Oxford, Cambridge, and Bristol. I haven't been to any of these three cities. So, Chris, tell us about one of them.
My favorite of the because I have visited all three of them. My favorite would be Bristol. However, I think I'm going to talk about Oxford because I think that's what our listeners and our, Hispanic audience are going to probably be more interested in Oxford, and for good reason. I preferred Bristol because I'm English. It's English culture is my culture. But for someone who is not English and appreciates and wants to learn about English culture, then Oxford is fantastic. It's just the stereotypical Love Actually. Like I know Love Actually, the film Love Actually. I know it's set in London, but obviously like, Oxford looks exactly like that, where everything just looks like stereotypical Victorian England. It's just beautiful. It's clean. There's brilliant architecture. There's obviously massive cathedrals and churches. Fantastic for anyone who appreciates and wants to learn about English culture. But for someone who's maybe thinking about moving to the UK, no, I personally wouldn't choose Oxford. It just doesn't have that much going on. There's not that much nightlife. It's more just a picturesque. I know I'm overusing this word, picturesque, pintoresco, but that is honestly the best adjective I can think of for Oxford because it is so beautiful to look at and to walk around. It's so magical. But when it comes to social plans, I mean, yeah, there obviously are bars and restaurants, but not anything special like Liverpool or like London. I think, yeah, so great for visiting. If anyone wants to do a day trip, I recommend it. If anyone wants to move there, maybe rethink. Yeah, maybe rethink that option. But yeah, beautiful
Exactly.
city to walk around.
Awesome. Well, let's finish off with one more city each. I know you want to speak a little bit about Bristol, and I want to mention one other city as well. And we're going to stick to England because, of course, we could mention Belfast, we could mention Cardiff, we could mention Glasgow and Edinburgh, which are all worth a visit as well. But because we're running out of time, let's just stick to English cities. And stick to means continue with. And the one that I think I'm missing is Newcastle. And Newcastle is right at the top of England, the northeast of England. And it's just next to Sunderland. So if you are a football fan, you'll know that Newcastle and Sunderland is a common derby. Notice the pronunciation, Derby and not Derby.
Yeah.
And Newcastle, well, it's famous because of football, but also another reason why it's famous is perhaps because of Geordie Shore. And
Jolly Shore.
Geordie Shore, Newcastle is by the beach, so shore makes sense. And it was the first UK adaptation of the famous American reality TV kind of series called Jersey Shore, because Geordies, people from Newcastle, did have this reputation of going out a lot, partying a lot, being very friendly as well. It's a very friendly accent. So Newcastle is pretty small, to be honest. Like, there's not that much to see. You've got a beautiful bridge and you've got a river that flows through the city going straight to the beach. And other than that, it's the typical place where you might go as a Spaniard and think, Newcastle's going to be amazing. Let's go for a night out there as well. And then it'll be 5 degrees and you'll be wearing your gloves, coat, scarf, and then you'll look and nobody's wearing a jacket. And people will be wearing t-shirts, or they'll be wearing short sleeve shirts, or you'll have girls wearing a dress or a skirt. And you'll be like, what? Aren't they freezing? So this
Geordies.
happens in
Yeah.
many cities in the UK, but I'd say it happens above all in cities in the north, and I'd include Newcastle, Manchester, and Liverpool as being the top three for this kind of image that you would see if you went out partying in England.
Yeah.
So check out Newcastle.
Yeah, I've heard it's a great night out. I love the Geordies as well. The accent. Way, hey, man. Way, hey, man.
Exactly.
Very well. So
No,
then
it's
I'll
great.
quickly finish. Yeah, I'll quickly finish just a couple of minutes on Bristol. This is a very emerging city for Hispanic speakers. Over the last 10 years, similar to Manchester, over the last 10 years, I've heard about more and more Spanish or Colombian or Mexican people going to live in Bristol. Beautiful city. Again, similar to Brighton, it's very bohemian. I remember I went to an abandoned skate park and it was a nightclub. So there was a half pipe, like in Tony Hawk's, there was a half pipe with just a DJ at the top and people, not, there was
Uh-huh.
obviously more. That was just one area. But yeah, very bohemian, very kind of hipster and just cool. It's very underground, is a great adjective. Like, not literally underground for anyone who's watching or listening. When we use underground in this context, we talk more about not the mainstream, not the commercial. It's underground. It's not very well known, but normally it's very cool because it's secret and exclusive. So yeah, Bristol has lots of really cool underground places. And again, it's got the coast, it's got the marina and the port. So there are beautiful views and really nice walks. There isn't a beach, but there is a coast and a marina. So lovely views, lovely walks, and just in general, a very bohemian underground city. I definitely recommend it to anyone.
Well, in that case, it is on my to visit list for sure. I think I'm more tempted to go to Bristol than I am Oxford or Cambridge or Birmingham again. I'd like to go to Brighton as well too, but hey, who knows when it's going to happen? And well,
Yeah.
we will finish off there. And just to finish off, a nice little thing that you might be curious about that I think is interesting to know is, what do we call people from these cities? Now, of course, not every city has its own denomin. I don't even know what it's called. It's
Yeah.
people's name, it's place name. But if you are from London, you're a Londoner. If you're from Manchester, you're a Mancunian. If you're from Bristol, you're a Bristolian. If you're from Liverpool, you are a Scouser or Liverpudlian. If you're from Birmingham, you are a Brummie. And to be honest, people from Leeds, we don't really use any of these terms, but if we did, it would technically be a loiner.
Oh, that's
Loiner?
horrible. That's
Yeah, it
horrible.
doesn't
Sorry,
even
no,
sound good,
no
does it?
offense. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we don't use it. And people
Yeah, I think
from
it's better to say
Brighton, you
I'm
are.
from Leeds. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. So people in Brighton, we are Brightonians.
it makes sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, watching. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you
Bye.
very much, everyone. Bye bye.